Hi everyone, this is a video about how I do mixing in my live techno system. If you're just into the music, you might want to listen to some of my other videos where I'm playing my live sets, but if you're into the equipment and how I do things, then this video might be for you. So in terms of mixing in this system, it's quite a small system. It's just a 7U case at the moment, and I really try and keep it to this kind of size. So it's relatively straightforward in some ways. Most of the mixing's being done with this particular mixer. I guess the most particular thing is getting the right mixer for this. And when I was looking for this mixer, which I've had for quite a few years now, I really wanted to have something that had a few key things. The number one thing being probably the size. There's loads of really interesting mixers in Eurorack. A lot of them are either quite big or they are a similar size to this one, but they don't quite have all of the features that I personally wanted. So this one is the one I ended up going for. So this is the Blue Lantern Stereo Sir Mix Alot. You don't see these very often. I think it might be from an American company. They make a few different versions of different mixers. Some of them have very similar names, but this is the Stereo Sir Mix Alot. And this is the one that I found that is a good all-purpose mixer for a whole set. Some of their other mixers have more specialized uses, I think, but this one is the one that I went for. And why did I go for it? Well, as I said, it's a fairly compact. I'm not sure exactly how much HP it is, but it's pretty compact. It's got 6 channels, so quite a few mixers will only have 4. This one's got 6 channels. What really key thing that made me jump in and go for this mixer is that it has 2 aux sends per channel, and for the way that I use effects, I find that really useful, and I'll go through that. I do use a few other modules in conjunction, and I'm going to talk about the effects that I use and how that works with this particular mixer as well. But basically, how this works is it's a 6-channel mixer. So one of the downsides of it perhaps is that it is pretty cramped. There's a lot of knobs on here. But I have to say, I do find that it's not actually as tricky to operate as you might think from just looking at it. You can, the knobs are decent quality and have just the right amount of movement for me, I think, in that you want it to be just about right, because if they're too heavy and hard to move, then this cramped aspect of the layout would make it very difficult to get things in the right position. But also if they're too loose, then also you can end up like overturning things and stuff like that. So it's a pretty decent quality bit of kit, and I've been using it for my live set and taking it out and about and stuff, and I must have had this for about 5 years now, and I haven't had any issues with it other than just the very occasional, if I don't use it for ages, I might get a tiny bit of crackle on the pots, but then if you just kind of turn them and work that out, then it's all gone. And that's the kind of thing you're going to get with any analog electronics over time, but it's been absolutely rock solid other than that. So yeah, we've got 6 channels on here, and the channels are arranged vertically, so it's a little bit hard to see how they're working because they're offset from each other, but they're quite straightforward really. So we've got 1 channel here, 2 channel here, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. And for each of the channels, you've got the level, just the volume. You've got a send A, a send B, and you've got a pan as well, which is quite useful. You've also got these mute switches, which are kind of quite heavy switches side to side to mute or unmute a track. Personally, I don't really use them that much, partly because if you've got a sound running through and you mute it, you can get some clicking sounds because it's just a very simple switch. It's not sort of buffered in any way, and I know some systems, some mixers do have. I'm not quite sure how it works, but they have a way of stopping it from clicking when you hit the mute. This one is very simple, which is probably partly why it's so reliable. But yeah, I tend to mute things on my sequencer rather than muting things in here. But it's a useful feature to have. So yeah, basically this is then just repeated for each channel. We've got a level, we've got a send, and we've got a pan. And then over here we've got our master output. and we've got the various connections for the effects returns. It's got, as well as 2 stereo sends, it's got 2 stereo returns as well, which is quite useful for effects, and inputs and outputs, and so on. So yeah, for each channel, it's really pretty straightforward. So if I just I could play something on here. I can turn up my Maniciteritas here. So turn the effects down. Yeah, we go to pan, we go to left, over to right, and I find the pan's quite useful. I don't use it as a huge performance effect, but one of the things I've learned over the years from mixing is that subtle panning can create a good sense of space in a mix. So perhaps if I have 2 different synth lines playing, just offsetting them on the pan, you don't have one in one ear and one in the other, but a little bit of offsetting of similar lines that are going to be playing at the same time could create a little bit of space, which is really useful in a mix. And then thinking of creating space, we come to the aux sends that I've got set up. So my send A is to a reverb. And that reverb it's sending out of the stereo aux send, and then it's coming back in the stereo aux return, so all pretty straightforward. It's sending out to an effects aid here, which is the reverb. I can make a really massive reverb. I can turn it down to a smaller one. It's got different presets. So the FX Aid is a multi-functional effects processor. You can load in the algorithms that you want. So you don't have to have all, I don't know how many there are, 100 or so algorithms or something loaded into it. And you can change the order of them. So this unit I've loaded up just with different reverbs, and I've set up the presets so that there are a few reverbs that I want. And to be honest, with the way I use reverb, I don't tend to change too many different presets. I don't want really wild effects. I just want kind of a reverb that I can bring things in to. Now, people have often said to me that when they listen to my sets that the kind of sound and the mix sounds really good, and I think there's a few aspects maybe to that that I try and aim for, but one of them is the use of reverb. And I often see people's modular cases where they've got effects and they've got them kind of wired in series, so you've got a synth going out into a specific effect and then into the mixer and stuff. One of the things that I've really wanted to do, which is maybe not a very modular thing and more of a kind of traditional thing, is to have this reverb on aux sends like this. And so most of the time I will have at least a little bit of reverb on every one of these channels, because what that does is it sends them all kind of into the same space. So it can be quite subtle, it could just be like this in the background. But it's a completely different sound to just having it totally dry. And if you want to have it totally dry sometimes as an effect, then that's fine. And that it can be really nice sometimes, pull stuff back to totally dry and it has a different impact. But normally I will have at least a little bit of reverb on everything. They're all running into the same reverb, all running into the same space. Just puts them in the same space. It's really, really nice thing to have. That's the kind of thing that it is very difficult when you're performing to actually hear, especially if you're using monitor speakers. And that's one of the reasons I always use in-ears or headphones to be able to hear the details. But also, even if you can't hear it, the effect that it gives across a whole mix is important. So yeah, really important having that reverb. And I think the effects aid is a really nice one. It's got a good sound, lots of different algorithms that you can use, and also it's relatively small. So sometimes I'll use it as a crazy effect. You can get a nice build up and stuff, but a lot of the time I'm using it as quite a subtle kind of effect. So the next aux send B, I've set up in a bit more of a complicated way. I guess I would ideally like to have more aux sends, but this works in the space that I have. So what I do is I have send B is sending out of its output over here, but it's then split. So it's sending a stereo signal left and right, and the left and the right are split with these tendrils, splitter cables into two signals. And one of those signals comes round to another effects aid, which is a delay. So if I just play something on here, have a bit of reverb on it as well. And if I turn up send B, got a delay, and I like this delay with the filter on the output, so you can turn up the feedback loads and it can sort of go into the high frequencies or into the low frequencies, change the lengths of that. So yeah, so that's fairly straightforward. I can just use it as a delay. And again, this is the effects aid. I've got a bunch of delay algorithms in this. It has a clocked mode as well, this one, which is, it works in a bit of a weird way. You send the signal into the left and then you send the clock into the right input. If I just turn the balance over, you'll be able to hear the clock on the right hand side there. So it clocks the delay, and you can turn it around to get different divisions of that clock. Yeah, so that's used a lot, obviously, sometimes a little bit subtly, sometimes it's quite a creative effect. But because the signal's split, it also goes over to this Monsoon granular processor. So this is like Immutable Instruments clouds, basically. And by the way, all these effects I'm using fully wet, so they don't replicate the signal that's being sent to them. They come back round to the return. So yeah, this, if we perhaps, I'm just going to turn the feedback on the delay all the way down. If I turn up the density on this one, and I might have to send it a bit more, we'll start getting this granular processor. And what I can do, if I don't want to be using the granular processor, I just turn the input level all the way down, and then nothing goes into it, and turn the input level up, and we start getting this granular stuff. You'll notice it more if I turn the tuning up, so you can do this kind of shimmer stuff, or the feedback. It's got its own reverb on this, which is quite nice, because on its own it can sound a bit dry. Just put a reverb on that effect, or you can like really wash it out. You can sort of wash it out with its own texture control a little bit. It's also got a freeze, which is quite a fun effect. You can continue to play with it. This one also has I don't know if the original Crowds has this, it has like a reverse. It does like reverse grains. So anyway, that's a really cool kind of multi-effect. So it is on the bus and the send, as I say. So if I just bring this back, it does mean that like everything that you're sending to that send will go into that. So you get sort of everything running in. Some people would probably prefer to just have it on one thing and have that like specific control. But to be honest, it works as a nice effect with different things running into it. And you can get some interesting textures. If I then turn everything down, you know, we get bits of the chords and the line. You can get some really interesting effects. You can pitch them down, so on. So I've also got a LFO over here, and this is just a utility that's changing the amount that's sent in, so it's modulating it. I think the clouds type processors on their own are kind of interesting, but if you're able to actually modulate them with an LFO, you can get some really like much more interesting stuff going on. And this is a clocked LFO as well. I can change the speed of it too. yeah, so anyway, that you can get some quite interesting stuff. So obviously I was splitting the signals for the delay and for the clouds processor. So I have to bring them back together somehow. So what I do is I've got another stereo mixer over here, which is just a 3-way stereo mixer. This is an STM mixer that I got from a kit, I think, and I built as a kit. So that is running. I've got the delay on one channel here. I've got the clouds processor on another channel, and then I had another spare channel here. So this is where we get into now the sort of slightly hacky bits of the mixing, because I've shown you I've got my individual synths coming into these channels, and I've got my effects going and returning. This brings 2 effects together to return, but that's used all of my channels, and basically all of my synths and my effects are kind of taking up all of the channels now. So I had to do some hacky stuff to be able to just get a few more channels to run stuff in. So the 3rd channel on this effects return is actually my Forge TME Vic, which is like a really weird kind of drone synth. So that's running into the 3rd channel. So I've got another control of that here. So I don't necessarily touch these 2 that much because they're the returns from the effects, but I will use this quite a lot to change the volume of the Forge TME. And because it's got its own effects in it, it doesn't really need to be in a channel in the mixer which can be sent off to other effects. I'm sure you could do some cool stuff if you had that, but as a compromise it kind of works. The other thing that's sort of compromise that I have to make things work is my drums and my bass. So I don't have any channels left for my drums and my bass. These are all synths, and I've got the returns. So I have a slightly hacky thing going on with this mixer here. If I just unplug this. So this mixer has a connection here called stereo link, and what that's for is so that you could chain a few of them together. If you wanted 12 channels, you get another one, you could run the outputs into a stereo mini jack cable and run it into the link there. I'm actually using this just to run another mixer into it. I've got this converter here because it is a stereo connection, so I needed to have a stereo to mono converter because I'm running a mono jack into it, and then that just puts them on both sides and plugs in there, and then that is connected to this small mixer over here, which currently only has 2 things plugged into it, but it has the drums output from my sampler, and it has the output from my bass as well, my bass synth that I use. So that means the drums and the bass can't be sent to any of the effects. That's sort of an okay compromise. I do quite like being able to send the drums to the effects. In a previous iteration I had it where I could send the drums to the delay, which meant that I could do some really fun things in build-ups and breakdowns, but you know, I have to find other ways of creating that kind of tension now. This way I managed to get quite a lot of stuff in here, so I've got my sort of 6 different synths and sampler voices. I've got another bass voice coming in over here, I've got my drums coming in over here, and I've got my Vic coming in over here. So in a way I kind of get 9 channels coming back into this mixer, even though it's only a 6-channel mixer, so that's quite useful. I do have a few trims in places as well. I've kind of set up most of these so that I'm working on about halfway on the faders. I try and keep things at roughly the same. Why halfway? Well, so I've got space to turn it down, but I've also got space to turn it up if I need to. I just find having that sort of reference point. And some of the synth voices are going through this VCA, which gives another kind of trim to it. So in particular, this noise engineering Manisteritas, if I turn that down, it's got a really loud output, and if I was running it straight into the mixer, I'd be working with it way down here at the bottom, which is not very easy to balance with other things. So it's running through this VCA, and that is bringing the volume right down. Just tweak it so that you can see it's really difficult to work with down at the bottom, but at least because that's a trim, I can just set it, and then I don't really have to touch this when I'm actually playing, and it gives me a good volume level on the mixer there. that's being done with the VCA with a few things. I ran out of channels on the VCA, so I've actually just got a normal attenuverter working on the Platts voice, which is down here, just to bring that to a sensible level as well. So off screen down here, I've actually got a trim for the Platts voice so that I can bring that down. So what that means is most of the time my kind of set level, let's turn that clouds off. My set level for things is pretty much at 12 o'clock. And then, you know, if I want them to be quieter in the mix, I'd bring them down or whatever. But I'm working from a set level most of the time, so that's quite a useful thing to be able to do. It's very useful to be able to manage stuff. The other kind of management thing you might have noticed is the color coding. I've just stuck some colored stickers onto these faders, and I've used colors in a few different places. So for the Maniciteritas, we've got a blue sticker on here, and we've got a blue fader cap, sort of knob cap on the VCA that's running it. And I don't know if you can see down here, but there's a blue sticker on the Maniciteritas itself, and there's also a blue sticker on the sequencer on the channel for that. Now, I wasn't doing this for a long time, and I was getting on absolutely fine, but I've realised that it's really important to kind of manage your own cognitive load when you're playing live. You're doing a lot of things, and the more you can do things that mean you can save even just a moment in terms of having to stop and think before you do something, then the better, really. So having those colours, you know, if I do need to adjust the trim on my Maniciteritas and I come over to this VCA, I don't have to stop and think, oh, which channel is it on the VCA for that one? It's like, it's blue. I'm here, I don't have enough travel on my volume, it's the blue one, I need to change the blue one. If I want to mute it on the sequencer, sorry you can't see that off screen, but I just press the mute on the blue channel on the sequencer and it mutes it. So actually, even though I didn't 100% need that, I found that a really good thing to do. And so all of my synths have got these color coded stickers on them, which relate wherever they can to color coding on the different knobs and the different parts in the gain staging which are helping them and which are working with them. Okay, so that's the overview. That's my how I do mixing in my system. I hope that's been useful for everyone. It's probably a more traditional way of doing mixing in a way, working with effects on sends and stuff rather than working them into kind of a patch that has things running in series. But that's the way I like to work anyway. And it's the way I've kind of hacked together. I guess I've got 3 different mixers really, but they're all running together in different ways to make use of the stereo link and the aux sends, the aux returns, to be able to bring quite a lot into what is a relatively small space for the amount of sound that I can make, hopefully. Hope this has been useful. Let me know if you've got any questions. Really happy to answer them in the comments, and I might even make another video. This one was inspired by some questions that I got in the comments. So yeah, I'm always looking for ideas for useful stuff I can share in these videos. So see you in the next one.